Hello and welcome to Radio Somanaut. I'm your host, Whitney Dawn Piles, and in each episode, I'll be interviewing inspiring and innovative individuals who are impacting the world through somatics, using the modality we call body-oriented coaching. Each one of my guests is a Somanaut. That means they're a graduate of the Somatic School, an online educator that trains coaches to be stewards of the body's wisdom. We'll be hearing their stories and getting particularly curious about how they're carrying this impactful work into their lives and communities. So in the spirit of the Somatic School, my invitation to you is to embrace ease, take a breath in, and allow their words to be a welcome exhale. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is our panel, Diverse Bodies, Diverse Practices. This is our Europe panel of Somanauts. That is, they are all graduates of the Somatic School. My name is Whitney Dawn Piles. I am our community connector here at the school. I'm also a body-oriented coach, a somatic coach myself, and I am the host of Radio Somanaut. That is the Somatic School's official podcast. I am currently on holiday, on vacation with my family. I'm joining you from Hudson Valley, New York area in the US. This is not home. Home at the moment is Columbus, Ohio. So I am joining you from the US, and I am joined by three wonderful Somanauts, Clément, Sanela, and Ali. Welcome. They will be our panel today, and I'd love to invite you all, please just hop off mute, introduce yourself briefly, and let us know where you're joining us from.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sanela. I am joining you from the UK, and I'm a graduate since December 2024. I'm a senior leadership coach, and I work with ambitious and value-driven leaders to help them to access more courage and more confidence and authenticity in the way they lead and live their lives. And I'm delighted to be here.
Delighted to have you, Sanela. Thank you.
I'm Ali Pember, and I'm currently sat in Spain, so in Malaga on holiday. Fly back to the UK tomorrow. So I've spent this morning with my daughter kind of baking in the sun just to kind of absorb as much kind of vitamin D, UV as possible before I head back to England, which apparently is grey and raining. I graduated from the Somatic School back in 2023. And I'm also a psychotherapist. So I combine psychotherapy and somatic coaching in my practice. And my specialism, my area of focus is primarily around motherhood and parenthood. So that involves supporting mothers and parents really throughout all stages of life with a baby, a toddler, an older child, so a very developmental kind of lifespan approach. And people contact me, at different points in their life when they feel they need more support. That's me. Very glad to be here.
Glad to have you here, Ali.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. So my name's Clément. I'm from Paris, France, as the name can tell. I'm a somatic coach and breathwork facilitator. I've got a background in architecture and systemic designs, and today I help ambitious people facing eco-anxiety, loss of meaning, to reconnect with their bodies, to find clarity, alignment, and have a real sustainable impact. So my work bridges somatic coaching, transformational breathwork, for those who know that, and creative practices to support changemakers, both in Europe and other continents. That's me. Really glad to be here on this rainy Parisian day with you guys.
Thank you, Clément. Yeah, happy to have all of you here. And even just with those introductions, just noticing the diversity of work that you're doing in the world. So just to set some expectations for the folks listening now or when you're visiting this on recording, diverse bodies, diverse practices, we're really talking global perspectives on body-oriented coaching. And so our themes today might encompass translating coaching across languages and cultures and countries and contexts. And that also includes disciplines and industries, as we can just see from the variants and what we're hearing from these introductions. So we'll hop into that. And as I do on Radio Somanaut, I love to start from the beginning, start with what first brought you into the somatic coaching, the body-oriented coaching bit of your work. So whoever would like to share first, I would love to hear from all of you on this question. Just why did you initially choose to train as a body-oriented coach? What were you doing, or what were you noticing that had you feeling like this was the next right step for you? And whoever wants to take that first.
I'll go. So for me, that happened in 2020, and I came into it through my own personal experience. I sort of hit a plateau in my own personal development, and somebody suggested embodiment coaching, and then I found somebody and I worked with them, and I don't know, the experience was just mind-blowing and so liberating and so transformational for me. I was kind of, when I think about it, to me it felt like when I kind of hit that feeling and ceiling and I could not change my behavior, I understood cognitively what I was doing, what I didn't want to do anymore. I just could not consistently get to do what I wanted to do. And when I worked somatically, it felt like the imprint of those stories that I had in my head, those behaviors, those patterns that I had in my head, they were kind of stored in my body. I kind of knew that, but through somatic coaching, it felt like I cleared all of that. And because I cleared that, then I created a sort of space for a different me to emerge. And that's how it felt. It felt like a cleansing of the unwanted, and then creating space for who I was becoming. And that sort of blew my mind, and I was in that coaching for, I kind of kept going back to it. And with all my coaching development, every time I experienced something that is so transformational, is so impactful, I knew immediately that I would train in it. I knew it. And because my coach was trained with the Somatic School, I knew that everything was clear for me. I knew where I'm going to train. I was just waiting for the right time. And that happened last year. And it was, the training with the school, then now I can do what I experienced, I can do it with my clients. So that was my first entry point, and kind of the rest is history.
Thank you, Sanela. Yeah, come on, Ali.
Yeah, I guess I can go second on that. I was trying to just pull one string that would explain it all, but it was actually like a general movement of me. I come from a very intellectual background, and the French culture as a whole, as I perceive it, is really about brains. It's like if you're intelligent, you're someone. If you can't manage to be intelligent, sometimes you're just less important, And my whole story has been about mixing intellectually understanding something and thinking this solves problems, issues, knots. But yeah, in like 30 something years of being on Earth, I've progressively realized that it doesn't work at all. Like I can understand perfectly where I come from, but I'm still there. And through various experiences from movement medicine, which is one of the modalities of free movement, to sacred plant medicine from the Amazon forest, progressively came into realizing I have a body. Oh, breaking news. And that this overall system actually most of the time overrides what my intellect is thinking. And the rest has been about finding the right texture to bond, how to explain that, and to embody this, and yeah, transmit it to each and every other person from my own culture that might need it also, because it's been just like really deeply rooted, life-changing process for me. And the Somatic School has been the cherry on the cake, I guess, really saying to me, to my whole system, actually, some people systematized these learnings and managed to inform systems and make people able to transmit this. I was going to say knowledge, but it's not really about knowledge, is it? It's more about presence. So yeah, that's how I came to the somatic world. Thank you.
Thanks, Clément. Yeah, Ali.
Yeah, I'm just listening and kind of resonating with what both Clément and Sanela have said, because I think for me it was a mix of kind of personal and professional that drew me into wanting to study with Somatic School. And the personal piece was a catalyst that had happened a few years, well, more than a few years before, which was my own pregnancy, actually, and the birth of my daughter. Which for me flagged up this huge disconnect between the world I had been in, which was a very corporate, very academic, very headspace world where I was rewarded for lots of external doing. And suddenly the most embodied experience of my life, gestating a whole new human being, I mean, if that isn't the most embodied experience of your life, I don't know what is, forced me to acknowledge the beingness of existence, my own existence, and also this sense of interconnectedness. This little being here interconnected with me. And I think I'm kind of coming full circle in a way, because I'm on holiday with my daughter now, and she's probably listening to what I'm saying as I'm on this call. She really plunged me into my body in a hugely visceral way, because then whole act of giving birth, breastfeeding, the early years, which are all about kind of contact with that child. I couldn't work in the corporate world anymore. It was interesting, I kind of had this delusion that I could somehow reconcile that side of myself with this kind of other demand. But I found it impossible to compartmentalize. And so I quit my job. I retrained in pregnancy yoga, mum and baby massage. So I kind of went to the opposite extreme. You and I went into a very embodied world and sought to share with others who were going through that same transformational process of matrescence that I was, how it is to not be scared of your body and the changes that are happening, and of bringing this new body through your own body into an embodied world, and I was psychotherapy trained already, so I knew that there would be aspects of that obviously also involve the thinking, the mind, the rational kind of way of trying to understand things. And I witnessed, my clients really going through much the same process that I did, which was that I'm trying to make sense of what's happening to me intellectually, but this is so big and so transformative. I simply don't have the language to label this embodied experience. And so I was looking really for a modality that would act as a bridge between the kind of the doing and the thinking and the making sense, because that's still important, but trying to kind of get through this incongruence of the beingness of having a newborn and then a toddler and then a now much older child. So my clients come to me at, different stages where this incongruence tends to come up for them. It can also come up later on. It's not just a sort of early phase thing. And the Somatic School really gave me the tools, the way to be with clients and invite them into their being as well, in a way that felt that it bridged the intellectual sense-making process and the physicality of their experience. So yeah, it's very much for me a bridge, which really helps integrate those two wholes.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you all. And this idea of a bridge is certainly going to come back through because it comes up a lot in the school, on the podcast. So we'll definitely sit with that and just want to extend an invitation to the folks listening again, whether that's right now or after the fact. If someone says feels really nourishing or inspiring to your system, if you resonate with what someone is sharing, I really want to invite everyone to stay with that and tend to that moment for a minute. And if there's anything that especially resonated with you from what any of these people just shared, please feel free to engage in the chat as well. We would love to see that. So just a quick invitation there, but yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. And I really want to place us in our realities and where we live and who we work with. And so my next question is, so thinking about your context, where you are in the world, who you work with, how you're sharing this work and this vision, why is this work important where you are? Why is it important? Why is it needed in the context that you work in?
I can go in here, Whitney. I think for me, this work is truly life-saving for the clients I work with, in the sense that they often come to me right sort of teetering on the edge of burnout. Burnout because we simply don't support parents in our society. So my context is the UK, but I work with clients from across the world. I work online. And I think it's this sense, that I was describing earlier, this kind of disconnect, this incongruence that comes up when you've had such a deeply embodied experience as motherhood, parenthood, and people around you are still interacting with you in a way that completely negates that. So I'll tell you a little story which kind of would help to illustrate this, I think, and it's very much the kinds of stories that clients tell me when they come and first see me, which was that I had to go back into my corporate job after having had my daughter, and I had to fly to the US, and I was in like one of those corporate boardroom kind of meeting spaces. It was quite a male dominant environment. I wasn't the only woman there, but I was one of the few women there. And I remember sitting there and we were going through one of these kind of endless PowerPoint presentations. And I think it really was mission statement stuff and like visions and whatever. And I think I had kind of mentally checked out. And one of the reasons I had mentally checked out was because I was still breastfeeding my daughter and I needed to go and pump breast milk in order to sustain the bond between me and this kind of, year-old infant back home. And I just could not be present with the PowerPoint slides whilst my body was giving me these kind of signals that meant that I had to make all sorts of excuses and head off to the bathroom and furtively pump breast milk in a very, hidden, closed, kind of, my corporate life could not recognize, acknowledge, or integrate any aspect of my new experience as a mother. And it would have been quite shameful for me to have revealed that to any of my colleagues. They simply wouldn't have understood. And what I see in the clients that come to me is that they're teetering on the edge of burnout because they're trying to be everything to everyone. They have this incredibly embodied existence with, little kids pulling on every single body part and demands sleeping, feeding, everything, the whole embodiment of that experience. And then they're having to take themselves often into a work environment that makes no reference to that whatsoever. And they have to don a completely different persona. And that is hugely cognitively, emotionally, physically demanding to have to keep switching these kinds of roles. So I think with the somatic work that I do with clients, it's a way of offering them that lifeline, that bridge, sometimes between those two worlds. You don't have to be these entirely different people. You can be the same person. You may obviously present differently, but to try and remove this kind of incongruence between these different spaces that we force ourselves into, I think. So yeah, I see it as like profoundly, life-saving for people who feel that otherwise quit their job when they don't want to do that. They don't want to become full-time parents. They often want to try and find a way to combine the two.
Thanks, Ali. I think you were cutting up a little bit at the end, but I do think you finished your thought. If you hear me, just let me know. Just let me know that you have. Beautiful. Thanks, Ali. Yeah, Clément, Sanela, why is this work so important in your context, where you are in the world, who you work with?
This question immediately brings in a very strong emotion to me, because I guess each and every session I've had so far with French people, at least, and a bunch of other Westerners also, have really been about realizing, oh, but these people actually forgot they are mammals and they have a nervous system, because they've been raised in an entire culture that just says you're valid only if you ignore and override everything that makes you anything else but a Westerner consumer, So when I'm in the room with someone, being it physical or Zoom room, and successfully communicate to this other body, I'm seeing you as a nervous system and a body, and you can be whatever you want here. Like, it's really welcome. Everything that is making you right now is welcome. In my own feeling, 70% of the job is done, honestly. And it's a tremendous job. It's like, oh, okay. I've been putting denial on a huge part of my experience as a human being for years. And someone there is giving me a glimpse of what else it could be. And like most people that need to shift something to get where they want to get, usually start there with me. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Clément. Yeah, Sanela, jump in.
So why is it so important and so relevant? So because I work in the corporate environment with business leaders, I firmly believe that the world really needs brave, big-hearted, grounded leaders who are also able to hold others accountable. So what I'm seeing in my world, and I recognize myself from before being that person, we go into the world with lots of masks. Like, we are, I've spent most of my life, and I see that with my clients, like, we ask the world, who do we need to be in order to be accepted and successful in here? And that gets us, so we play the game. We kind of tick the boxes, we play the game. And as we are doing that, we are orphaning parts of ourselves. We have to deny we start numbing the kind of the messages that are present in our system and who we are and how we would love to be. So when I get clients in my world, when they start to lead other people, there comes a conflict, and that kind of comes at the age, so most of my clients are 35 upwards. So there comes also that age where the strategies that we've had, these coping strategies to try to fit in the world, become really heavier and heavier. So this armor, we kind of take it so that we can play the role, but at the same time, it stops us from being the leaders we need to be. It stops us from connecting with the people the way we need to connect. We just lose everything that we want by taking so much armor on. So in order to create the leaders who are both wholehearted, so I work with people who really care, but when they really care, they start taking too much on themselves. So as Ali was saying, people start experiencing burnout. So I think with somatic work, just teaching people and bringing that felt experience of what's present, how congruent are we as we are trying to do something, it's so powerful and creates a space for a whole different conversation. And my whole experience in, when people come into my world is like as Clément said, just for people to be seen, to kind of say, let's create you to be a leader who you are, to amplify who you are, because that transparency and that authenticity inspires transparency and trust in others. So we are creating this ripple effect. That takes a lot of courage. So I get shivers just thinking that as coaches, we are able to create those bubbles where people can be seen, where they can be acknowledged and grow from within, and then do their magic in the world. So that's why I think we need this work.
Thank you, Sanela. And yeah, there's just something in what all of you shared about just being human, being a human, being a whole human, and bringing as much as yourself as feels supportive. I mean, I'm going to use safe, as much as yourself as possible, to these places that you show up in every day. So I'm really struck by that. And I will just share a little bit of my experience in just coming generally into the coaching world, and this kind of underpinning of coaching, this belief that any person we might work with is creative, resourceful, and whole. And I think I understood that cognitively when I first came into a more traditional life coaching. And then as I came into the Somatic School, into body-oriented coaching, into somatic coaching, I think it took that approach to really feel that all the way through my system. Just this idea of being whole and being human, and allowing ourselves to show up more fully, show up more authentically. And if we are within systems or structures that don't allow for that, maybe asking what might need to change. So I'm really struck by that thread in what all of you shared. And this idea of a bridge has continued to, it always comes up, and it's definitely come through this conversation. And also the idea of translation. And so I'd love to take this literally. I know, Clément, there's a language element, like a literal language translation that you're doing, having trained with a program that is UK based, that is English language, and working with people in French. And so I'm very curious about literally translating languages and what your experience of that has been. And there's also a different kind of translation happening. Myself as a somatic coach, I am asked, or even just using the word somatic or body oriented, I'm asked a lot, what does that mean? And so there's a little bit of bridging, a little bit of translation that has to happen in order to effectively communicate what this work is, and what its purpose is, and what its value is. And so I'm curious about that, just this idea of translation, and whatever that means to you in your context, So I'd love to hear from all of you on this.
Yeah, since you name it specifically with the literal translation, I can start maybe. Um, Hearing your question, I thought, yeah, I'm actually sometimes regularly not translating the words that I've been taught in English, because they bear a specific meaning per se that the French, very conceptual language, sometimes cannot really grasp. And it can be the contrary in some of the contexts, but with somatic coaching especially. I even get sometimes words from Brazilian Portuguese, because I've been living in Brazil for a while, and in my own feeling of it, the whole South American continent had, as a cultural trait, a really different body experience than the one I can get in my own country. And when I have to talk about what somatic coaching is here, especially because it's not known at all, even coaching sometimes is just like a really fancy new thing, you know. I try to get the conversation as short as possible and to get them experience something as fast as possible, because necessarily they're going to have an idea of it, a concept of it that's most probably really far away from the transformation it can give them, in my own perception. And actually expressing what a somatic practice can do to your own system just in words it's a huge amount of work, where a simple practice can actually give you an answer in a matter of seconds. So yeah, basically my short answer would be, with someone that doesn't know about somatics at all, well, let's take that room and have a little practice, should we? Because yeah, that can explain way more than just talking, really.
Well, now I have follow-ups. Now I have a couple of follow-up questions. Come on. I'd love to know if there's if there's any specific practices you lean into. I would love to know about that if you're comfortable sharing. And then I'm also really curious, and you had mentioned, you know, you lived in South America for a while, you're in France currently. And so I am also really curious about like receptivity and how like how your approach, or how the opening of that conversation, or I guess maybe just the differences in doing this work in those two different places, contexts.
Yeah.
Curious about both of those things.
Okay, I'll try and answer the first one. First, usually will be something that Somanauts would consider very basic, I guess. So like 5 minutes orienting with somebody that actually never did that intentionally, but usually just unconsciously flying away from a difficult situation or conversation, just saying, no, this is a real practice. We're doing something here. And the result of it, if you pay attention to it, might bring something in that you like as a state of mind and body. Can be some breath work, but very basic. But yeah, usually what works is just saying, okay, everything that you are right now, including the voices that are judging what we're doing, is really welcome. And if you can, just pay attention to what's happening without judging it or trying to change it at all. And this brings a lot. About the difference I felt between what I've experienced of the South American continent, and especially Brazil, because I've spent most of my time there in this country specifically, compared to France or the rest of Europe that I know. I would say at first I was contacted by somebody from the school that knew I had spent some time there, like and asking me if I would somehow try and represent this continent, speaking of somatic practices. And I was like, honestly, I think we, the rest of the world, might learn a lot from the way South Americans live regarding somatic practices and ways of being, because the body is everywhere as far as I'm concerned, especially in the Brazilian culture. Like almost every single person I've talked to knew how to dance something that would seem a complex thing to most Europeans, and would spontaneously express, solve, get along with any kind of situation with movements, consciously or not. On the contrary, my perspective on the French culture, especially, and some other European cultures I've been in touch with, tries to start with the brain, ignoring what's happening in the nervous system, and then maybe comes back to the body in very intentional and trying to be coordinated way, and finding free spaces to actually let your body leave and lead in there is a tricky thing, really. It's not the most common. Yeah, that's what I would have to say about that.
Yeah, thank you, Clément. And then just orientation as a practice, just for anyone who's not familiar, it is very simply connecting to our environment through our senses. So just calling attention to the simplicity of that practice, yet the effectiveness. And it sounds like demonstrating what might be possible through body-oriented and somatic coaching. I mean, dance is a whole other, that's a whole other panel in my opinion. So thank you for bringing that in. And I think that you landed on something really specific there. The tendency to lead with the brain, to lead with the mind, to lead with the intellect, and coming into situations, culture, conversation where someone might be very used to leading from that place. And then maybe letting the body in after. And I imagine this is something that those of us in this panel, many Somanauts, have experienced, just this very specific challenge. So I'd actually, for Sanela and Ali, Sanela specifically, actually, because you mentioned just working in corporate environments where people are likely very much leading with the brain, very much leading with the mind and the intellect. I'm curious to hear from you on this, on how do you translate body-oriented coaching, somatic coaching, into your context when you're speaking to these people about it?
Thank you. I don't put labels on it. That's one thing that I think about them as people who have something to solve. So they don't particularly care whether I am going to use a kind of cognitive, I don't know, below and above the line concept, or I don't know, daring greatly concept, or I'm going to pull out some somatic work. The way when I first meet people, so I don't kind of say, oh, I'm a somatic coach, I'm a disc coach, people don't particularly care. I found they don't really care about that. But when we have initial conversation, I will speak about transformation. So I speak about transformation, that it happens in both our brain and it happens in our bodies. We have two systems. We use both systems to perceive the world. So whenever anything happens to us, we make up stories. We are making machines. We make up stories, and those stories are stored in here. To shift the behavior, shifting the story, shifting perception, changing the way we look at things, that is the one element of change. That is sometimes enough for us to do something different. Everything that we experience produces either an expansion or contraction in our system. So I speak about a blueprint. We carry all these stories in our bodies as a blueprint. And sometimes we find that we can change the story, but we cannot, we remain stuck. And that's why we have not engaged the body. So I speak about congruency, about being in alignment, about having brain body working together so that we can maximize potential of all these systems to transform. And I speak about sustainable change, because oftentimes when we change story, or we try to tell ourselves to be different, to do something differently, and our system is screaming like, mayday, mayday, like, I don't like that. And we are not talking about that. Right, so we are performing a transformation, performing change. So when I'm in I speak about that. I speak about this is available. This is a somatic work. So I'm going to invite you sometimes to go over here. We are going to use both systems. Are you on? Like, would you like to use 100% of what you have, or would you like to use 30% of what you have? Everybody wants to use 100%. So that's one thing, just explaining change. And then it's, and I've been working, I find the more I'm comfortable with the tools, the somatic tools, because I have experienced somatic tools, I know how amazing that is. So for me, the more comfortable and the more I'm practicing using somatic tools, whatever they are, a little simple leading, simple way of seeing the client is, kind of all stressed out, and instead of kind of ignoring that on my screen and saying, oh, so what would you like to do? Let's go into go into doing. I pause and meet them and say, how might it be that we just create a little bubble and resource ourselves so that we can work together? Those are small interventions, and that is how I, integrate those tools. And with some people, invitation, how might you like to explore this somatically? Some people just jump into it and are just take to it like duck to water. Some people, they cannot go into their body, and that's fine. That is okay. So I meet them where they are and give them what they need. I always have a different way of meeting them. So for me, it's really what I love is being comfortable and having those tools available and translating into the language, using the language that they will understand. That's it. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. Thank you, Sanela. And it reminds me of there's something here, and it of course flows beautifully into Ali sharing. But what's here for me is I mean, what you're saying about having like let's call it a library. I was going to say arsenal. We're going to call it a library. We're having this just library of skills. Maybe it's a small library, that's totally fine. But having this library of skills that you really pull from based on your experience of that human that you're sat across, or those humans that you're sat across from, and what feels really special about that, and what's coming up for me, and just as I'm referencing my own experiences, we as practitioners, coaches, providers, therapists, whatever it is we call ourselves, whatever we are, to be able to draw upon that library of skills in a way that is effective and makes us able to translate, to speak to communicate around this work in ways that might be received. Like, we have to be really in touch with our own felt experience of that person. And so, right, these same skills that we might use with someone else, what is so beneficial that we ourselves have also experienced them. And that brings us more in tune with our own embodied experience of whoever it is we're working with, wherever we are in the world. So even Clément, just noticing the differences and just being really present to and attending to the differences between the people in these places of the world that he's lived. So much of that just speaks to our own, presence, connectedness in our environment. So that's really here for me. Yeah, was there anything else?
No, just listening to you speak, I think having somatic coaching, what it did for me, without even talking to my clients about it, what it did for me and my system and my biology, it created so much groundedness, so much resourcefulness, that with every module we covered, and every experience that I had within the classroom that was so amazingly regulating and gentle to my system, I started showing up differently for my clients. So there's something about depth of presence that we develop by being recipients of this work, not even practicing this work, just being recipients. That has transformed me as a person and therefore as a coach.
Thanks, Sanela. I'm really receiving that and like really feeling some spaciousness in my belly as you share that depth of, I mean, just depth of presence is such a lovely term. And I'd love to go to Ali from here, because you did talk a bit about, you know, working with a whole, like with a variance or different clients that are in different places in their own journey. And so, yeah, I'd love to just go to you with anything that you might want to add on what we've been talking about, or just around this idea of translating and communicating the importance of this work into, yeah, your context.
Yeah, well, I mean, picking up on both Clément and Sanela's points around not really necessarily overtly or explicitly labeling this work as somatic coaching. I mean, it says it on my website, right? So it's there, the label is there. But when I'm actually with people, it's much more about how I show up. So that very much follows on from what Sanela was saying. And I think for me, it's about getting into my body before I even connect with a client. You know, not scheduling people back to back, having that sense of spaciousness, groundedness. Have I drunk any water? Have I taken a screen break? You know, just the basics of my own physiology. Am I meeting my own basic needs before I turn towards another person's needs? And I think there's a lot in this approach about modeling that. And certainly for my client group, you know, the very harried, harassed, kind of stressed parents turning up, often at the last minute, often late. Often my call with them will be the only time in their day that they actually have a chance to be, because they're doing, and I'm in the calendar, I'm on the to-do list, you know, it's flashed up on the phone or whatever, they have to get to the call. Sometimes they've still got the child kind of in the back of the screen, or there's partners and people walking through. It's kind of chaotic. And I create an oasis with them. It's not necessarily an oasis of calm, but it's certainly an oasis of being. And it is that sense of welcoming. Okay, you've turned up and you're still on the move. Can you see how, you know, we're both kind of in this energy of moving? And so similar to Clément and similar to Sanela, I think I just use really simple grounding, feet on the floor, bottom on the chair, short, simple orientation type practices just to land. And I often say to clients, you know, shall we both land? Shall we both land in this space together? And sometimes I think the power of the session, beyond any words we even share, is just modeling the beingness. Hey, we've rocked up, we're in the same space together. Okay, I'm comfortable with this not being tidy. I'm comfortable with this not making much sense. I'm comfortable with the silences, even if you're not. Yeah, and I think I also, in my practice, I do tend to share quite a lot of my own personal experience, which actually is not really, you know, from my psychotherapy training, we were very much taught, and I'm obviously boundaried about what I share, but a bit like choosing to tell you guys, you know, up front about my really quite personal story of where embodiment landed in my corporate world. I will share stuff from my own life with clients to help them feel that it's okay to be in a messy body with all sorts of feelings that are not easy to explain. And it's okay. And you can, yeah, it's okay actually if you turn up late, you know, if you have to, that's fine. If you have to get up and move about, drink a glass of water. So just the real basics, I think sometimes it gives permission for clients to come as they are. That's the translation piece for me. It's the modeling of what I'm offering there.
Thank you, Ali. Yeah, permission, modeling, giving yourself permission to be a human. I think you might be frozen a little bit. And yeah, orientation has just come up a few times now. So before we jump into questions, I'd just love to take a moment for everyone, panelists, anyone watching right now, maybe just take a moment to put your feet on the floor. Notice your feet on the floor, feel your bottom in the seat. And for just 60 seconds, we'll take in our environment before this last question I have for panelists. And before we take any questions from you all, just let's take a moment to get a little more comfortable in our seats. And just allow our eyes, our gaze to go wherever it wants to go. So really taking in our environment. And maybe if our eyes land on something that is pleasant or nice or enjoyable, maybe we just let our eyes rest there for a moment and take that in. For as long as it's enjoyable, and the moment it is no longer enjoyable, it's just allowing our eyes to wander again through the space we're in. And maybe our eyes land on something else that we find pleasant or nice or enjoyable. And just take that in. Savor whatever that is. And maybe just take a moment tending to our inner experience, and maybe just noticing what's new, what's fresh as a result of this conversation that we've all participated in. So just taking a moment to bring our awareness maybe within, and just noticing what is alive, what is fresh, what is here as a result of this conversation. And whenever you have that, panelists, I'd love to hear from you. What are you leaving here with? And anyone engaging, anyone watching, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. But yeah, what are you leaving here with? What are you leaving this conversation with?
The first word that came to me is community. And a sense of acceptance. Whenever I'm in the room with Somanauts, or there is a sense of just relax and being yourself and connection. So that's what I'm living with.
Thanks, Sanela.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm leaving here with a sense of deep interconnectedness, because I think we've each been talking about very different client groups, very different work contexts, and yet it's so obvious we all have bodies. And just that, I mean, it's just such an astounding fact, isn't it? With these kind of amazing computers walking around in these kind of vehicles that we completely ignore. And when we start to bring that into the conversation, it's just like, oh yeah. And it's surprising to me that even though I've been in this work for a long time, I still need reminding of that. I still need other bodies to remind me that I'm in a body and that it's okay to be in a body. And it certainly is wonderful to be with a bunch of other people who don't think I'm a complete weirdo for wanting to bring that into the conversation. So yeah, I have kind of warm, fuzzy feelings about it, and just this sense of interconnectedness.
Thank you, Ali. Love that.
the words that come to me is resonance, definitely. And a renewed wow emotion, reminding myself that what we do can be really, really simple, yet it's so rare yet in our cultures. Well, I'm projecting here. the the ones I can feel so far. And so yeah, it's obvious maybe to me on a daily life, yet it's precious. And I'm proud to be here, and I'm proud to bear that light.
Thank you, Clément. Thank you all, Ali, Sanela, Clément. Thank you for being here and just sharing so generously and beautifully about your experiences. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It was, as always, a joy to be in the space. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.
Thanks
Thank
a lot,
you.
Whitney.
Yeah, thanks,
Sanela.
Whitney.
That's our show, folks. I hope you found something nourishing, enjoyable, or inspiring in today's episode. Thank you for being here, and see you next time. In the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram at Radio Somanaut. You can also find out more about the Somatic School and our accredited diploma in body-oriented coaching at thesomaticschool.com, or follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. This is Whitney Dawn Piles, encouraging you to stay present, stay curious, and stay connected.